Hello, I'm the Greek Geek, and this is the belated review for Batman Arkham Origins, the third and latest installment into the celebrated Arkham series. The Arkham series comes to us all the way back from 2009 when Warner Brothers did the unthinkable, and instead of slating the usual tie-in for their Hollywood blockbuster The Dark Knight a year earlier, they instead commissioned a proper Batman game. The game was developed by Rocksteady and published by Eidos before they were bought off by Square Enix, and it deployed talents favored to fans, such as Kevin Conroy as Batman, Mark Hamill as the Joker, and writer Paul Dini. The game did have one huge accomplishment to claim. It managed to make the player feel like Batman through excellent visuals and sound, faithfulness to the Batman mythos, particularly as described through Batman the Animated Series, and of course through great gameplay that mixed easy to get into and hard to master combat mechanics, as well as very basic, simplistic, and yet surprisingly functional stealth mechanics. The sequel, 2 years later, called Arkham City, was bigger and arguably better. Unfortunately, it lost its sense of direction and a lot of its focus because of its sandbox-centric design. But the mechanics were more refined than before, and the wealth of content kept the game in our systems for far longer than we'd have expected a superhero game to last. Now we get Batman Arkham Origins, and unfortunately this time around things don't look too good for the Caped Crusader. The thing is, the shocking ending to Arkham City opened up new paths for the series to take. Early rumors, as well as an interview with Paul Dini shortly after Arkham City's release, hinted even faintly at the possibility of the next Arkham game being a launching point for a Superman game, or even an entire Justice League lineup game series. So imagine how heartbroken and frustrated I was as a comic book fan and a gamer, as well as many others, when we heard that the game was simply going to be a prequel. A prequel in this scenario is such a cop-out. It's essentially the magic reset button. It restores continuity, it restores the status quo, and pretty much saves both the developers and the characters within the narrative from having to deal with the consequences and the aftermath of the previous games. It certainly didn't help that development would pass from Rocksteady over to Warner Montreal. Having played through the game now, I am sad to report that my concerns were more or less validated. The story goes like this. It's been 2 years since Batman started operating in Gotham City, and he's being treated as a myth by both the public and the police. Gotham's criminal underbelly has come into contact with him, however, and naturally deems him bad for business. So the crime lord Roman Sionis, also known as Black Mask, puts a price on his head, and 8 assassins from all over the world come to the city on that one Christmas Eve to take him down. For almost the first half of the game, very few actually happens. It's exactly what you'd expect from an ill-advised prequel looking at a young Batman early in his career. An encounter with a penguin early in the game is so dreary that I had to drop it for a few days just because it didn't work for me. But then, something happened. The story got good. It got really, really good. Halfway through the story mode, there is this plot twist that essentially introduces the Joker into the narrative. Now, the plot twist in and of itself isn't all that great, but it's a turning point for the story when things really start getting serious. Shit goes down. Things start happening. The emotional stakes get high. The last third of the game is explosive. It doesn't let up for a single second. The set pieces are amazing. And most importantly, there is character development, and this is where the game won me over, because I've had a problem with Batman in the last decade at least. It's the fact that DC has essentially written the character into a corner because of his popularity. He has become this extremely smart, extremely calculated, extremely capable fighter who is able to go up against gods from Krypton or Apocalypse and leave the encounter completely unscathed. It's ridiculous. He hasn't had any conflict in a very long time. He's become a one-trick pony who only makes contractual appearances in Justice League stuff just because he's popular. And I've been missing on the things that the character can still give, can still offer. Arkham Origins doesn't tread any new ground, but it does its job well. There is development for the character, there is emotional resonance. Young Batman is rough and violent, he's an angry boy with a promise to fulfill, and he outwardly expresses his anger when wearing the mask. He has to learn that you cannot inspire people when you detach yourself from society. You have people you care about, and you're a better person for it. The bigger picture is irrelevant when it lies on empty rhetoric and ignores the little people in it. It was the first time in a long while that I really connected to Batman as a character, and I really enjoyed looking into the Joker's psyche as well. The game dedicates a small portion to the clown, and it shows how he grew so insane and obsessed with Batman, because when he appears in this game, he's not the guy we know. He's not right in his head, but he's not all that different from any other crime lord. It's Batman's idealism he finds fascinating and starts obsessing over it. I never liked Joker's promotion to arch nemesis because he was never meant to be that. He was just another bad guy from the hero's rogues gallery, but it's done so well here, I just bought it. I ended up really enjoying the story, and I didn't expect to. I thought it would be complete and utter crap. Actually, to be fair, it was what turned me around on this entire game, because if it wasn't for the strong writing, this review would go down a lot differently. And here is why. From a gameplay standpoint, there is nothing interesting. It's simply a repackaged Arkham City, same sandbox map and all, only a hell of a lot more broken. The combat in particular is what put my balls in a meat grinder. Free flow is still the name of the game. Hit one button to strike, one to counter, time both properly to get combos. The problem is that the auto-lock rotation is fucked and just fails at times. Some attacks glitch out and don't even connect. Countering is a hassle because enemies are very inconsistent about the pacing of their attacks, and sometimes it just won't even work, as won't the stun move. The game is also picky about stopping your mid-attack to counter, leaving you open and exposed with every move you make. All of the above have the ultimate result of combos breaking very easily. That's merely an annoyance at first, but it becomes a real problem later on. These games rely on mastering combat so that you can unlock special takedowns and critical hits for the harder enemies. But combos break so easily thanks to the glitched out mechanics, the game discourages combat variety, and the only way to ensure success is play it safe and constantly switch between hit and counter without taking any risks. As such, combat is slow and unengaging at best, or completely frustrating at worst. The Predator mode stuff mechanics fare a bit better, and actually as the game progressed I found myself enjoying this game's Predator sections more than the ones in Arkham City. Glitches and stiff controls are still present, but level design is better and offers a lot more different routes, while the enemy AI is just a hell of a lot more aggressive. Sadly, the enemies also seem to have contracted a curious case of brain farting and will occasionally freeze or get stuck on obstacles. I literally aced the last Predator room in the story mode because 7 out of 10 enemies got glitched. 3 of them got stuck in a never-ending run against walls and crates, and the other 4 came down to check on that one guy I once took down, then turned around and froze, unable to figure out how to climb a fucking ladder. 4 dudes, each one of them did the exact same thing. They didn't react, they didn't respond, they just stood there staring at that one ladder, granting me essentially 4 free takedowns. Detective mode is back as well, and once again it's extremely intrusive during Predator, but it does come with an extra feature that's noteworthy. Batman can use the mode to scan the crime scene and recreate the events of that crime. It's a nifty little idea that I found tragically lacking in execution, as the game is very restrictive about it. It's not freely accessible and only activates in predetermined objectives, with Batman or the game giving instructions for each step with no sense of freedom or actual detective work. Considering that this is practically the only new thing in this game from a gameplay perspective at least, a little more focus on it would have been welcome. Its implementation isn't bad, but it can easily be replaced by a quicker and more to the point cutscene, and that's never a good sign. Lastly, there are boss fights, and this is the one area where Warner Montreal can claim clear victory over Rocksteady, because the game features likely the best boss fights in the trilogy so far. Though when you've set the bar so low that even garden gnomes need to limbo dance under it, that's not exactly saying much. There is nothing as strategic and calculated as the Mr. Freeze fight in Arkham City, but overall the battles are more impressive. The penultimate fight with Bill as the Firefly is spectacular, the final battle with Bane made me pee my pants in fear, and the fight with Deathstroke was exciting, even if its brilliance is severely undermined by his health bar going down too slowly and the encounter being placed too early into the game when the player still gets familiar or at least reacquainted with the game mechanics. Graphically, the game looks good enough, even if optimization is shit unless you own an Nvidia VGA, though I wasn't exactly fond of the art direction. The game takes an even more realistic approach than the previous 2 titles, and there is a significant lack of color even where the Joker is concerned. This is made all the worse by the free roaming. Not only is it restricted to the same portion of Gotham that was Arkham City, it's also a lot less visually engaging as it's basically the same buildings without the variety, just cardboard boxes covered in snow and ice. It's only made worse by the complete lack of citizens and the overabundance of criminals and crooked cops in what's supposed to be a perfectly inhabited portion of the city, causing it to feel lifeless and empty. I'm split on the sound. The soundtrack is entirely forgettable save for a couple of tracks, but the voice acting is great. I wasn't very fond of Roger Craig Smith's Batman at first because he had the whole raspy gruff voice for tough guy routine, but once Batman started developing as a character, the dude killed it. Conroy is the defining voice of Batman, but he hasn't offered much emotion to the character since Mask of the Phantasm. This guy does, and he owns his role to the last line of dialogue. Everybody else is pretty spot on too, from Troy Baker as the Joker, who may sometimes be sounding a little too much like Hamill for my taste, to Dick Sprang's Riddler, whose comedic delivery is just pure gold. There is a fair amount of replay value in the title. First and foremost, the game now features its own multiplayer mode that I admittedly couldn't even be bothered with, while the usual challenges return as do the Riddler trophies, even though now they're called data and extortion packs. New Game Plus is back too, while an extra hard mode called I Am the Night is unlockable. Reportedly, the mode offers a permadeath game. If you die once, you're done. Restart the whole thing.
There are no continues, my friend.
I don't know why you'd want to do that, but I play MMORPGs regularly, so I'm certainly not one to talk about a waste of time. I'm quite hard-pressed to call Arkham Origins just a quick cash-in on the popularity of the previous titles, even though the game would have benefited from more development time and more playtesting. I have no doubt that Warner, as a company, as a big company, saw the success of the previous titles and thought that this would be easy, that they were riding on the popularity of the other two games to sell this one to a large audience. But the actual development team behind it, especially for someone who just got into this gig, they were not Rocksteady, they were just picking up after them, they did well enough, and they did put a lot of effort in it, even if it's just a story mode. But it's not just a story mode. The game mechanics, while severely flawed and sometimes downright broken, still have something to offer, and honestly, the game really isn't all that bad. If it was released a few years back, we'd be talking about an amazing game. It's only in comparison to its predecessors, to Arkham City and to Arkham Asylum, that it falls short in that comparison. Having said that, though, I cannot in all good conscience recommend it for a full price purchase, because it is essentially broken, and unless you're a hardcore Batman fan, you should not have to deal with that. Aside from the broken mechanics, from the stiff controls, there are glitches, and beside the ones I mentioned, which are small stuff, many players have reported constant freezes and crashes and save games not registering or just disappearing altogether. And there is that thing that the game constantly throws you back into the title screen if your internet connection drops. I don't know if that's their WBID thing, or if it's actual DRM, or if it's one and the same thing. I hope Warner Interactive just drops this shit, because if it is DRM in particular, it's stupid. It doesn't accomplish anything, and it only punishes your very valid customers. I have a legit copy of the game, and I had to crack it early on, entirely in protest, because I don't even have internet connection problems. My connection is fast, and pretty much 97-95% uptime, extremely stable. Yes, welcome to Greece, where we don't have money to put food on our table, but the internet is A-OK. Anyway, honestly, the game is a lot of fun if you can get past the broken controls, the broken mechanics, and the story mode has a lot to offer. Is the story mode in a game about friggin' Batman good enough to sell you that product? I'd say yes, but not yet. Just wait until a severe price slash, or even better, when the inevitable Game of the Year edition has been released, because the amount of DLC so soon after release is just ridiculous, and that's another practice that has got to die. I stupidly bought the game already, and I'm not getting any of the DLC, but if you want to get the full experience, the whole package, so that you can get the most out of the title, replay value and all, wait until that edition comes out, and until then hope that they will release many patches to fix the problems, because you as customers deserve better, and honestly the license deserves better. Other than that, if you already have the game or you really just want to buy it now, at least look for a deal, for a sale. It is a game that can offer a lot, it is a game that can be a lot of fun, but it's also a game that's not the best that it could be. That's all from me for now. You can find more at greekgeekpreak.blogspot.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at greekgeekpreak. I'll see you next time.